I had two questions up front, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So, sir, you said that solar was something that you felt had a lot of promise. But India, you were disappointed with the way things worked out in India. Sir, without any filters, could you tell us, I mean, honestly, what do you think went wrong?
Well, actually, I wouldn't just say India, because it's the world's problem. Yes. Energy is the world's problem. As far as India is concerned, the problem is very, very clear. It's much, given the kind of regulatory systems that we had in India, they're slowly being transformed over the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm sure more transformations are coming. But given that, it is much easier, frankly, to source it from outside than to source it inside India. Secondly, the venture capital movement in India, the entire ecology of discovery in India has remained unfriendly for quite some time. And there have been hostile actors in this. For example, I've got, I've studied case studies, actual case studies, in which you had certain technological innovations made by young Indians such as yourself. And unfortunately, when information about this, because we are a fairly open people in terms of giving information to our families, to our friends, and it travels. And today, in the age of of your emails and whatever, it travels even faster. A certain country that is very involved in giving technology to India was very unhappy about that technology, because that technology was much cheaper than the technology that it was selling to India. Cheaper and, in my view, better. So as a consequence, various legal, procedural, administrative, various other obstacles were placed on these individuals. And finally, what did they do? They didn't give up. They went to an alternative country and they set it up there after about 3 or 4 years. And they started challenging that particular country after 3 or 4 years. They started challenging that. So you understand.
So you are saying that the Indian state sabotaged its own citizen scientists on the BS. So
I'm not saying the Indian state. Okay. I'm saying the Indian system is such a highly regulated system. We still have colonial era law. The colonial law is a wonderful law for the colonizer because it's so easy to file an FIR, for example. Now, if somebody wanted to file an FIR against me for going against the Indian state or India or saying that innovation was not welcome in India, it's child's play. You find a friendly police station, you find a friendly, whatever argument, and then the other chap will be spending a lot of time running from this court to the next. I remember, some of the defamation suits that I've handled, and not so much in the Times of India, as in Mathrubhumi, we used to take very strong, editorials and write-ups. So they would immediately file vexatious suits. So you had to go argue here, there, everywhere, and the editor was always called. I mean, frankly, as the editor, I had no idea that the story had even been published. It had never come to my attention. But I was the chap, in the dock. So the system is still way too easy to hound and harass for private parties, for interested parties. And sometimes they use the figment of, let us say, artificially creating NGOs. I've always been intrigued for 30 years that NGOs that have been very opposed to Indian coal. A lot of them in Australia, Canada, and other locations, they have no problem in their own countries selling huge amounts of coal, including to India, when Indian coal is blocked. Indian uranium is blocked. Indian copper is blocked. Indian aluminum is blocked. So it's a bit mysterious. Why, if I'm feeling so strongly about coal, I don't mind coal from my country, Australia, or I don't mind thorium from uranium from my country being sold to India. But I have a problem with with uranium mined in India or coal mined in India. I mean, possibly it's the best of intentions. I'm not casting aspersions to anybody, but it's absurdly easy to do that. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, from the information I have and from what I've been studying, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his team are aware of this problem. They're simplifying a situation so that the startup ecosystem is better. And venture capitalists also are now, it's not just Chinese venture capitalists. Whenever you have a very good idea and word gets around, the first venture capitalist to knock at your door will be somebody from communist China. The Indian venture capitalists will never knock at your door, almost never. Just as Indian corporates, they will never give a big donation or a grant or or set up a foundation to an Indian university. It's always some foreign university that is swimming in funds, tens of billions of dollars or pounds or euros in funds. But that's not going to stop Indian businessmen from giving them even more millions of dollars and pounds and euros. It's something in the psychology, I don't know what. But this is the problem that that we have in India. And that ecosystem needs to be developed. Why? Because the talent in India is fantastic. And today the opportunity in India is fantastic. Like it or not, there is a decoupling taking place from China, especially of tech. India, because of its human talent, is the ideal destination. Actually, if I can be frank, I've been looking to see if we can have a tech park, possibly a tech park of 2 important countries. I'm not going to name them here, but 2 countries coming together and setting up a tech park in the environs of Manipur, because your South Canara district, not just Manipur, it's an oasis of education. There are so many institutes, so many ITIs, so much of talent that can be ideal in large tech parks. So I'm only saying that I don't blame the Indian state, quite frankly, because the Indian state is an abstraction. It's like, I love Mother India, but I don't like any of the Indians I meet. I totally love Mother India, but I don't like Indian this and Indian that and Indian. I don't like almost all the Indians I meet except maybe myself. There's a small problem in that kind of abstraction. So I'm not comfortable when we use abstraction of the Indian state. But certainly, even today, the system in India has not been friendly to innovation and to startup ecosystems, but it's changing over the last 3 years particularly, and hopefully it will change even more.
Thank you, sir. Fantastic answer. So we have a few more questions here. Given the semi-hostile relationship between India and China, could you comment on strategies for India amidst this technologically advanced and hostile neighborhood?
See, I'm very grateful to the questioner for believing that I have the bandwidth to give an answer to that particular question. It's a $1 trillion question, and I'm thankful for that question. But it's absolutely true that there is a problem between China and other countries. We are into what I called many years ago Cold War 2.0. Even today, people are very shy of calling it Cold War 2.0, but it is a Cold War 2.0. In this, given the dual use of technology, so much of technology is also used in a military way, non-military way, especially if the Chinese comprehensive system of warfare, which you infiltrate health systems, you infiltrate agriculture, you infiltrate, lives, and so many other things. So there is definitely a problem in locating tech in China. Taiwan, for example, it's facing an existential threat from China. Japan is certainly not a good friend of China. The Chinese don't like the Japanese, they've made it very clear. Ironically, 3 countries that are the targets of China, the United States, Japan, and Taiwan, have been the 3 countries that have really enabled China to become the economic superpower it is. They are looking at India. They're looking very actively at India. And I think from that point of view, if you again define climate broadly, creating a climate of, if I may say so, a policy climate, an ecosystem that is friendly to that kind of of input would be very, very important. So I would say it's a great opportunity that has come knocking at India's door. China grabbed that opportunity in the 1980s when there was tension between the US and the USSR. We need to grab that when there is tension by the US and by China principally, but by other countries. That's the opportunity that is there for us, and in which the overall climate for a human society can improve. And if I may say so, one way of ensuring even a better climate is to ensure that the overall climate improves, in my definition.
Thank you so much, sir. We have received one more question. Comment on the future of technology transfer and data sharing between countries in the context of public health, if you could.
I'd like to say that I would not be in a position to specifically talk about public health, but I do wish to point out that metadata is basically the feedstock of artificial intelligence, which is at the heart of military planning and military operations in the modern world. And unfortunately, in the case of India, a lot of metadata has gone out of India and is still going out of India through apps and through various other means. And that metadata, a lot of it is going to China, for example, mobile phones or laptops or in any other way. Now, it's probably better if you have metadata going to the United States than to China, except that the United States is also a lot of people who don't mind taking a lot of money to transfer to China indirectly, not directly, but indirectly. So personally, I am in favor of a system in which the huge amount of metadata generated in India, I'm not saying don't share it, definitely share it. But I'd also like to say, mainly share it with those who have a similar point of view to yourself. And I'd like to put the democracies there. In the case of, if you look at continents, North America, the Europe, very definitely, ASEAN, the Middle East, all these countries, large parts of Africa, very definitely. So from that point of view, we have to understand that technology is dual use. And in that sense, India cannot develop technology, it cannot leapfrog technology unless we build up partnerships. We had a terrifically difficult time, but we managed to get a first-class space program and a first-class atomic program. We got it about 20 years later than what we should have. I'm not sure that we have the luxury of those 20 years today. As I told you, 5 years from now, God knows what kind of a situation we're going to be facing, including in terms of public health, in terms of food security, in terms of employment, etc., etc. So from that point of view, I would look at linking our partnerships, say, for example, with Taiwan, with the United States, with Japan, with these three countries, Taiwan, Japan, definitely. Taiwan, very definitely, because Taiwan is under an existential threat, direct existential threat from China. Taiwan is a leader in high tech. And I think it's very important for us to give the right kind of messaging so that we get a certain flow of technology into Taiwan, and the Taiwanese understand that we are a safe harbor. Because ultimately, we are to provide two things. One is a regulatory environment and a security that they have. And two, we have to give them the respect that they deserve as a technologically important country. We can't treat them as some subsidiary kind of a geographical entity, the way China wants the world to treat them. So I think respect and if I may say so, the ability to function in India in the way they are functioning in China is very important. And I know I'm really digressing a lot from the subject, but there's a Wistron factory in Karnataka. There was a labor dispute there. If you check my going on NewsX, fortunately, I have a lot of sources. I'm not going to say if there were saints or sinners who gave me the information that I got very quickly in real time after that Wistron thing. and that enabled me to go on television very soon after, that there was a external hand in these threats. And it turned out that the manager of that plant had a passport which is not a friendly passport to India. I'm not going to name the passport. It was not a Taiwanese passport. The Taiwanese company, but not a Taiwanese passport. And that manager was very friendly with 2 of the 3 top union leaders there. And well, the rest is something that, like Sherlock Holmes, you have to deduct. You have to fill in the blanks. So I filled in the blanks and said, this looks like it. And later on, it was confirmed that, I didn't know at that time that the manager had a different passport, and that many managers of Taiwanese entities across the world, including in America, including in India, have that particular passport. It's a red passport. I'm not going to name the country. It's not a Taiwanese passport, but I think that the Taiwanese companies need to realize that they're not only putting their own freedom in jeopardy, they're putting the freedom of other countries in jeopardy by trusting people, because in today's climate in that particular country, unless you do the bidding of the government of that particular country in every way, kinetic, non-kinetic, whatever, you are likely, or your relatives are likely, to have a somewhat rough time of it, quite frankly. So from that point of view, I'd only like to say technology is central. But again, technology is not just large-scale technology. It's like small towns in India. I've talked to friends in the United States, whether it's in California, in Southern California, where you have a lot of Indians, and then you have the locations in California like San Jose, etc., the tech, Silicon Valley, what it's called, and said that forget the big towns. I mean, I know somebody from Bangalore is going to kill me for this, but forget Bangalore or Mumbai or Delhi, forget all that. Go to the smaller towns, because that is where the action is. So that's where living standards are much better, quality of life is much better, and work environment is much better, and opportunities for work are also expanding. If you look at Manipal, for example, look at our campus. They got public health, they got education, they got leisure, and we have, as far as I can see, a very friendly bunch of people. I mean, I have never felt in any way that, there was any kind of, if I may say so, anything other than an extremely friendly ambience. I'm reminded of Ramdas, Dr. Ramdas Pai, who told me, when I first came into Manipal, he had 1 or 2 chats with me before that in 1998. You know what Manipal means, Monu? I said, no, what does it mean? It means many pals. Manipal means many pals. And he laughed, and I laughed. I said, for God's sake, this is where I want to be. When you have a chancellor like that, this is where I want to be. And I can only say, I think that's one of the best decisions I took in my life. And I'm grateful to Chancellor Pai and to Vice Chancellor Valiatan for having given me that particular opportunity. So I only want to say, look, 5 years from now, we don't know what we're going to face. From my way of looking at it, it's very eerily similar to what happened in the years before the First World War. Second World War was a freak war. It was started by a freak, and the causes were freakish. First World War was not a freak war. It was caused by a whole lot of geopolitical, climatic factors, what I may call that. And these kind of geopolitical climatic factors, in my view, are also operational now. So getting ahead in technology is crucial, and we have the brain power to do it. What we need to do, one very important thing, empower the underprivileged. One very big problem I have with the education that has been conducted in India during the COVID period, and I've always been a bit of a skeptic about these lockdowns. I didn't dare to say it publicly because, Manipal, I would have been beaten up. In Delhi, where you have all these great experts, I would have been hanged from a lamppost. But I think we went completely overboard of these lockdowns and, this mass vaccinations, and this is China's going overboard. I'm glad the Prime Minister Modi refused to go in for lockdown in 2021, has refused a vaccine mandate so far. Yeah, and I'm saying this as someone who has been double jabbed, because I was in Manipal campus, and in Manipal campus, you can't get away from Manipal unless you're jabbed, not once, but twice. So I'm not talking as a skeptic, a vaccine skeptic. I don't dare to be. But having said that, I'd just like to point out, there is a wealth of talent across India, a wealth of brain power across India. And that's a new bandwidth. But we need to empower poorer students by giving them free laptops, by giving them a cheap laptop. Why can't we try and develop a laptop that is cheap enough to distribute? You know, you're distributing food, you're distributing so many other things. But along with that food, you have to, if you don't distribute a laptop, frankly, the value of empowerment is much less, because so much of education now, even today, it's going to be hybrid mode permanently, in my view. And finally, it's going to settle entirely into an online mode in one way or the other, almost entirely. But the reality is, poorer students fell behind the last 2.5, 3 years because they couldn't afford a smartphone. They couldn't afford a laptop. They couldn't afford access to the internet. And this is, frankly, very unfortunate in our country, because from these students, you may have got some of the best inventions and innovations that the world will ever see. So I only want to say that today, you chaps are at the cutting edge of all this. In my case, I'd like to say very frankly, I'm very much a layman in these matters, but being with my training of two things. One is field experience. I believe in the field. I believe in applied science. I don't believe in abstract science. For me, unless something can be applied and applied to humanity, I'm not very interested in it. It can be amazingly wonderful. I mean, as a concept, and some kind of a fancy laboratory that has no value outside the small group of people that are admiring it. But for me, I'm a person who believes in applied science, and in all that I can tell you, we can play in India a massive role. You can play a massive role. And I think it's very important for you, therefore. That's why I told you, break this box. Break even this box of so-called climate. Because sometimes we get trapped by definitions. Don't get trapped by definitions. Don't get trapped even by definitions of yourself, that you're not capable of doing this. Oh, you're from India. You're not capable of doing this. I remember, frankly, what a change there was in the 1990s after Y2K. With my Indian passport, in the beginning, I used to land up in all these high-income countries, and I was looked at pretty nastily, if I may say so. And after the Y2K thing, oh, Indian, you must either be a medical doctor or an IT engineer. I was neither, but it didn't matter. They were friendly, and they passed me and my wife through. So that's waiting for us. And hopefully, if we succeed in that, we'll prevent any kind of a catastrophe, such as a World War III, from ever taking place.
Thank you, sir. I think we have time for one last question. This is, I think, from one of the students. The climate change statistics are alarming. Is the world ready to become a better place? And do we need to hurry up?
Look, we should have hurried up 200 years ago. It's a bit too late to hurry up now. You'd better focus on getting hold of technology that can reach other solar systems. And you better pray that there are other planets or other systems where humankind can do well. I'm saying it only very half seriously. I talked to a very eminent physicist in the United States about the value of the atom bomb, and frankly, of the nuclear bomb. I was very much in favor of total disarmament. He said, look, I'm not in favor of that. I said, why? He gave me a very, for what I thought was a fantastic and absurd kind of view, which is that assume that there is a meteorite coming at Earth, which if it hits the Earth, will destroy human life. And the only way to go and to destroy that meteorite is to send an atomic, a bomb into space on a rocket and destroy the meteorite. So at least for that contingency, you must keep atomic weapons. Of course, since then, I have been of the belief that atomic weapons can be kept for various other contingencies. And I'm totally in favor of the Indian government's policy of having a minimum credible deterrent. But I just want to say that we have already missed that bus. But let's hope through technology that we can catch a different kind of vehicle. And I want to tell our young friend who's asking this question, I remember once reading a book from, I think, 19th century, in which there was a forecast about London. London is going to drown in what horses discharge while they walk around or they move around, because there are going to be so many horses, because there are going to be so many carriages, and we have said narrow streets, and all those horses are going to do whatever you are going to do. So the streets will be filled with a particular kind of substance. And how is London going to survive? Well, very soon after that, unfortunately for the horses, or fortunately for them, the internal combustion engine. And now you have electric vehicles coming. So hopefully technology will ensure a more climate-friendly situation in the future. So I pin my hope on technology. But as far as your question is concerned, we missed the bus 200 years ago. We better find a new vehicle to hang on to, because the bus will no longer do.
I had one last question from my side, sir. This might not exactly be on topic, but when you speak about World War III, do you think what is happening in Ukraine might be a precursor to China trying to overtake Taiwan?
See, the best thing that America and the EU could do to China, the best gift that could do to China, was to basically go ahead with these sanctions. And these sanctions have affected supply chains across the world, and principally Europe. Europe is now denying itself. 50% of Europe is Russia. 50% of Asia is Russia. Russia may be a small country in terms of GDP. In terms of what I call GNR, gross national resources, it's a superpower. And if Europe denies itself Russian resources through this Ukraine war, Europe is going to handicap itself. And it cannot expect Asia to follow that policy. Sorry, Asia is not going to deny itself of these resources, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, whether it's palladium, whether it's nickel, aluminum, whatever. The huge wealth of resources that Russia has got. If Europe wants to deny itself, by the way, is not denying itself of any of these resources now, if I may say so. It's taking it through the back door. And this reminds me of a situation which long back, I went in Canano. There was a picketing of a liquor shop by some temperance activists. And I would notice as the editor, I used to sometimes go to and meet our correspondents. And they said, one of them, Canano chap said, see something very interesting, sir. I said, yes. And he told me, watch some people disappearing in the back of this particular shop every few minutes. I said, yes. What are they doing? I mean, I thought they're, whatever. He told me they're going in, taking a swig of alcohol, and then coming back and basically, demonstrating against the liquor shop. So, I mean, personally, when you're buying Russian oil through cutouts and through various other means, and you're basically completely dependent on Russian oil, and you lecture the world about stopping Russian oil, it reminds me a little bit about the kind of guys who went behind the shop, took a swig of alcohol, and then came back and started talking temperament. The only point is, today, it's a race. Europe is in that race. America is in that race. India is in that race. ASEAN is in that race. Arab countries in that race. Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia has understood Wahhabism will not work because oil is not permanent. You got oil, but tomorrow oil will be go. Then what are you left with? A bunch of unemployed people whom the education system has made unemployable. They can't be employed given the kind of education system that was there. So he had to change it, and he is changing it. Even in the Arab world, I would say UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they're changing the education system very fast to take account of that. India, we are changing our systems very, very fast. So I want to say it's a race. It's a work in progress. And frankly, to say that there will be a good outcome, I'm not in a position to say that. There could be a horrible outcome, there could be a good outcome, but if each of us try our best to avoid the horrible outcome, possibly it will be avoided.